All right, and we are back. And today we're back with another video by Useful Charts. This video was actually recommended by a viewer, Carlos4314. He actually recommended that, or they actually recommended that I check out this biblical family tree from Adam to Jesus by Useful Charts. Now, I know when I saw the Useful Charts video, I actually did a completely different video. But this is the one that he actually recommended to me. Uh, I think I just did the other one because someone also mentioned it may have been the same person, that the flags and some of the symbols are a little bit more accurate in the Useful Charts video. Honestly, I felt both videos were really good, so I may do another video from the other creator as well. It was actually a really good video, so nothing to get, they're both really good, so that's why I want to make sure to keep kind of doing both, especially for these Sunday videos, as they are an important part of my journey. And I do want to thank each and every one of you who are watching this journey with me now. And also, I do want to thank anyone who's hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. All the I know there's no comment button, but there are options to comment, and there are buttons within those options. So drop a comment, and I love reading the comments in there. Drop a like, and also make sure to hit that subscribe, because you never know what's coming next, guys. Now, because this video is coming out on a Sunday, I did decide to wear a button up. And because today is not actually Sunday, I decided not to iron it. So we're going to go ahead and check this video out. Remember, guys, if you don't like, comment, and subscribe, YouTube will come in here, and they will. This is Useful Charts, Biblical Family Tree.
Today I'm going to show you the family tree of the Bible, from Adam and Eve to King David. I'll be using my brand new biblical family tree chart, which can be purchased as a poster from my website, UsefulCharts.com. Keep in mind,
Hey, shout outs to UsefulCharts.com. Check them out.
that the sections we'll be looking at today, which are the ones at the top of the chart, are considered by most historians to fall into the category of myth and legend, whereas the sections at the bottom of the chart, which I've already covered in separate videos, are considered to be primarily historical.
Wait, was I supposed to do some research before doing this? Okay, I like this.
If you're curious to
What's going on
learn
here?
more about the terms mythology, legend, and history, and how they apply to the various parts of the Bible, you'll definitely want to check out part 1 in my series on biblical genealogy. You can find a link to that video, as well as all of the videos in this series, in the description.
Wait, am I not watching part 1? I thought this was part 1.
According to the book of Genesis, the first two humans were named Adam and Eve, and they were created directly by God. Now, according to modern DNA research, all humans alive today can in fact be traced back to a single male ancestor, which scientists have cleverly named Y chromosomal Adam, and a single female ancestor named mitochondrial Eve. But keep in mind that these two DNA ancestors are very different from the Adam and Eve from the biblical story. For one,
Well, you see, we're all black people, so, congratulations to anyone who just found out that they are at least, part black. I welcome you. No, you can't say that word.
one thing, Y chromosomal Adam probably did not live at the same time as mitochondrial Eve. And even if, by some strange coincidence, the science showed that they did live at the exact same time, they were likely not a couple, and they certainly would not have been the only two Homo sapiens on Earth. Instead, they were simply the male whose Y chromosomal DNA ended up beating out everyone else's, and the female whose mitochondrial DNA ended up beating out everyone else's. I hope.
Hey, shout outs to that guy, It's like, who wouldn't want to be that guy? It's like, say whatever you want about me, but I am the ancestor and related to all modern humans in the future, or future humans is what he would say. If he ever came to us, like if he ever got to our time, I guess he would maybe a little happy to know that, like, if anyone in history, that his family tree has evolved. And also her, she should be extremely proud of that. She's like the modern day mother of, of of humanity. That's kind of crazy.
Hope to cover the science behind all of this in a separate video sometime next year. But back to the Bible. According to the biblical account, Adam and Eve were a couple, and initially the only two humans on Earth. Eventually, though, after getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, they had two sons named Cain and Abel. Cain was a farmer, and Abel was a shepherd. But one day, Cain ended up killing his brother Abel out of jealousy. Now, considering that the Israelites were originally pastoralists like the good son Abel was, this story may actually have a basis in some sort of historical conflict between the Israelites and some nearby agriculturalists. But as I explained in the earlier video in this series, the biblical writers were more interested in making theological points than they were about simply recording exact historical details. Anyway, Adam and Eve went on to have a third son named Seth, as well as a bunch of other children. It is from Seth's line that we eventually get the next major character in the Bible, Noah. But before I go on, I want to point out that both Cain's line and Seth's line are recorded in the Bible and that they have some interesting similarities. Both contain a series of 6 names that are almost identical, except for one small swap and several alternate spellings. So one possibility is that both genealogies share a common origin. In other words, maybe there was originally one list of ancestors that was passed down orally, but over the centuries, people in one area remembered the names in a slightly different way, and eventually it developed into a parallel tradition. Then, at some later point, editors combined the two traditions and made it seem like they were separate genealogies. This is not the only example of parallel accounts in the first 5 books of the Bible. In fact, there are lots of them, indicating that these books were pieced together from multiple sources and tradition. Again, this is a topic that I hope to cover in a separate video sometime next.
And shout outs to him, but from what I know, the Bible just wasn't written by, especially at one time. The Bible was written collectively over time by I don't know who originally wrote I don't know about the original, especially like the First Testament and like this stuff. I'm still doing the other video about, Christian history too. So like I do still have things to work on. I need to figure out, and I'm sure someone in the comments can actually let me know this, like the first Bible, or I guess it would be like the first like, what do they call it? The Jewish Bible. You guys know what I'm talking about. I feel like someone should kind of like say who wrote that first one there. What's up with the story of that, and then trace that one back to these stories here. I think I might be just going off and like saying nonsense right now, but like, if anyone in the comments can tell me if I'm sounding ridiculous, please do.
Next year. For now, let's return to the family tree. Noah is the guy who built the large boat called the Ark and filled it with a bunch of animals. This is because God decided to destroy the earth in a flood and then start all over again with Noah and his family, who were the only survivors. Now, as many commenters pointed out in previous videos, flood stories are a common theme found in cultures throughout the world. This seems to indicate that there may have been some sort of major flood event that was retained in humanity's collective memory, or perhaps there was just a bunch of smaller events. You'll notice that on this chart there are 2 timelines. On the left, there is one based on the biblical account, and on the right, there is one based on the secular account, using the information that has been gleaned from science and archaeology. So you can take your pick as to which one you want to follow. But either way, it's interesting to compare the two. For example, on the secular timeline, I've noted that around the year 2900 BCE, there was a devastating yet localized flood in Sumer, and that this is the most likely candidate for the event that inspired the various Middle Eastern flood myths. According to the Bible, Noah had 3 sons, and therefore everyone alive on earth today would be a descendant of either Shem, Ham, or Japheth. This is where the idea of there being 3 distinct human races comes from, usually named white, black, and yellow. But let me emphasize strongly, this idea is not true. Modern DNA research shows us that we can divide people into hundreds of different ethnicities based on regional genetic variation. But there is no genetic marker that allows us to then take those ethnicities and group them together into just a handful of categories called races. The closest thing would be to group ethnicities by continent, but even there, the categories would overlap quite a bit, and they would not line up very nicely with continental lines. But the authors of the Bible did not have knowledge of DNA or historical migration patterns. So according to them,
not that we know of. Not that we know of.
Various nations of the earth that they were familiar with could in fact be explained using a simple family tree. And that's what the next part of the biblical family tree is. A family tree of nations. Shem had 5 sons. Ham had 4, and Japheth had 7. So in total, Noah had 16 grandsons. In most cases, the names of those 16 grandsons match perfectly with the names of nations that exist.
I don't know how accurate this is. I don't see the United States of America anywhere. Might have to recheck this out. I'm sure somebody would have claimed America, you know. They knew it was going to be great.
In the Middle East during the time when the Bible was written. So on this map are 5 sons of Shem, shown in red, 4 sons of Ham, shown in yellow, and 7 sons of Japheth, shown in blue. Let's look at Ham first. From this map, it's clear that Ham was primarily associated with Africa. In fact, up until recently, the term Hamitic was still used to refer to language groups from North Africa. Nowadays, the term Afro-Asiatic is used instead. The most important Hamitic nation was Mitzrayim. This was and is the Hebrew word for Egypt, but it was also the ancient Babylonian word for Egypt. So keep in mind that most of these names are not the names of people. They are quite clearly place names, Canaan and Cush being 2 more good examples. Turning our attention to the red section representing the descendants of Shem, there are also several recognizable place names here too. Aram being an ancient name for Syria, Asher being an alternate name for Assyria, and Elam being a nation that existed on the Iranian plateau prior to the rise of Persia. The only one that stands out as being a personal name rather than a place name is Arphaxad, which, as we'll see, is the person from whom Abraham, from Ur of the Chaldeans, descended. I should also point out that it is from the name Shem, ancestor of all these red areas, that we get the term Semitic and anti-Semitic. Finally, let's talk about Japheth, shown in blue. These names are more obscure and uncertain, as they are all names given to places much farther away from the land of Israel. Javan is usually associated with the Greeks, and Madai with the Medes. But when it comes to the other 5, it's mostly guesswork. During the medieval period, it was thought that some of these nations, in particular Gomer, spread into Europe. If we return to the family tree chart, you'll notice that Gomer had a grandson named Ashkenaz, who was thought to be the ancestor of the Germans. It is for this reason that Jews who lived in Germany and then migrated to Eastern Europe.
How do you wait? Is he gonna say? Can I say it? Am I gonna be able to say it? Ashkenazi Jews. I didn't say it right. I didn't say it right.
Came to be called Ashkenazi Jews. So
wait, did I say it right? Did I say Ashkenazi? I don't. Did I even say it right? No, I don't know.
When it comes to the three sons of Noah, very roughly, you could say that Ham represented Africa, Shem represented West Asia, and Japheth represented Europe. And this is exactly what certain medieval Christian thinkers promoted, which in turn led to the idea of three races, which unfortunately was used to promote a heck of a lot of racism. But we don't need modern DNA research to conclude that the classification system offered by the Bible is, at the very least, incomplete. You'll notice that the people living in India, China, Australia, the Americas, Sub-Saharan Africa, etc., were not included in this classification system. That's simply because
I did notice that. What's going on, man? America, throw us in there.
Because the biblical writers weren't aware that those people even existed. What they were doing was simply painting a picture of the world as they knew it. Okay, let's continue down the tree. Arphaxad had a grandson named Eber, and this is probably where the term Hebrew comes from. From there, if we go down another 5 generations, we get a man named Terah, who had 3 sons, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Of these 3, Abraham was by far the most important. In fact, the book of Genesis is really a book about Abraham, his son Isaac, and Isaac's son Jacob, together known as the 3 patriarchs. Everything in the Bible that comes before Abraham, like the Adam and Eve story and the flood story, is really just a prologue. Abraham is said to be the father of 3 major world religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it is because of this that these religions are often called the Abrahamic religions.
Yes, Abrahamic religions. Good old Abrahamic religions. I do plan on hopefully getting videos out that cover all the Abrahamic religions. I just think I think it'd be really good for me.
So let's look at his family tree. Abraham was married to his half-sister Sarah, but Sarah had difficulty having children, so Abraham married her handmaid Hagar as well, who was Egyptian, and had a son by her named Ishmael. But as the story goes, God promised that Sarah would miraculously have a child in her old age, and indeed she did, naming the child Isaac. Shortly thereafter, Hagar gets banished and winds up in Arabia, where, according to Islamic tradition, Ishmael became the ancestor of the northern Arabic tribes. A lot of people forget this, but Abraham actually had a 3rd wife as well, named Keturah. According to the Bible, the people who later became the Midianites are the descendants of Abraham's son named Midian from his marriage to Keturah. One last thing to mention about Abraham. It is curious that the name Abraham is comprised of the exact same consonants as the name of the Hindu god Brahma, who is the father of several other important Hindu gods, and who happens to have a wife named Saraswati. So maybe the 2 oldest religions on the planet, Judaism and Hinduism, both have links to a similar, even earlier tradition that includes a couple named something like Braham and Sarah. It's a very big maybe, but it's fun to think about.
It is a little bit of a jump. I will say that. It's a little bit of a leap, but a part of me is willing to go there with you. I like the idea of it. It is a very good think piece of obviously there's older religions out there that there's religions that we don't even know about, dead to history. type of things that may have sparked what we have now. We don't know. We probably never will. But this is very interesting to think about.
So, Abraham's son Isaac ended up marrying a relative named Rebekah. She was the granddaughter of Abraham's brother Nahor, thus making Isaac and Rebekah first cousins once removed. Together, they had two sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau was the eldest and therefore entitled to the main inheritance. But through trickery, Jacob managed to get Esau to pass his birthright on to him. So Jacob becomes the next big character in the story. He falls in love with his cousin Rachel. You can see here that her father Laban was Rebekah's brother, but Laban tricks him into marrying his other daughter, Leah, instead. In the end, he ends up marrying both sisters, but has to work for Laban for 20 years. In total, Jacob, whose name is later changed to Israel, has 12 sons and one daughter named Dinah. The 12 sons eventually end up becoming the 12 tribes of Israel. But before we move on, let's quickly look at a map of the biblical land of Israel. To the east, in what is today Jordan, there were three nations that were on and off enemies of the Israelites: Ammon, Moab, and Edom. Well, according to the Bible, these three nations were actually relatives of the Israelites. The Moabites and Ammonites were the descendants of Abraham's nephew Lot, and the Edomites were the descendants of Jacob's older brother Esau. Okay, the 12 tribes of Israel. Out of the 12, there are two that are the most important. Levi, from which the priestly line comes, shown in red, and Judah, from which the royal line comes, shown in blue. Now, the other tribes are shown in yellow, and if you count them, you'll notice that there are actually 11, meaning that in total we actually have 13 tribes, not 12. Let me explain. Jacob's most famous son was Joseph, who was given the multicolored coat, but wound up being sold to Egypt, where he became advisor to the Pharaoh. He was the firstborn son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, so he was given a double portion in terms of inheritance. Therefore, the tribe of Joseph is usually split into two tribes based on his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And since the tribe of Levi were appointed to be priests, they didn't get any physical inheritance. So once we take them out, we're back to 12. Anyway, Jacob and his family ended up moving to Egypt, where Joseph was living, and it is there that they grew into a nation. But as the story goes, after a few generations, the Egyptians forced them to become slaves, which brings us to the Exodus story and the story of Moses, the most important prophet in Judaism. According to the second book of the Bible, called Exodus, Moses was placed in the Nile River as a baby, and then discovered by one of the Pharaoh's daughters, who adopted him and raised him as her own. But as an adult, he sees an Egyptian beating an Israelite and kills the perpetrator. He then escapes to Midian to avoid punishment, where he meets Jethro and marries Jethro's daughter, Zipporah. It is in Midian that God appears to Moses in the form of a burning bush and tells him that he has to go lead his people out of Egypt and into the promised land, which was back where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had lived. Moses gets help from his brother Aaron, and after God gives Egypt a series of 10 plagues, Pharaoh eventually lets the Israelites go. Although, as the story goes, the Pharaoh then changes his mind and traps the Israelites near the Red Sea, where God then performs a great miracle, causing the sea to part and the Israelites to escape for good. They end up wandering in the desert for 40 years, though, at the end of which Moses passes on the torch to a man named Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim.
If I remember correctly, he pretty much makes it right to like where they wanted to go, the land of milk and honey, the promised land. And then he dies. I don't think he gets to step foot in it. pretty sure he dies like right before they get there. It is like crazy. I felt so bad. I was like, what is going on here? Let this guy, let him in.
Who then leads the Israelites to conquer the land of Canaan, where they end up dividing the land amongst the 12 tribes, with the descendants of Aaron being appointed as priests. Now, as I mentioned in part 1 of this series, according to secular historians, the leading theory is that the Israelites were actually just one of the many Canaanite tribes, and that they never did live in Egypt as a nation, not in the main part of Egypt anyway. During this period, Canaan was actually a part of the Egyptian Empire, so it's possible that some of them were in fact Egyptian slaves, and that they were somehow able to throw off that yoke of slavery, but in Canaan, not in Egypt. The exact details are not known, but this is yet another topic that I hope to come back to and explore in more detail at a later date.
Yeah, you got to talk more about that. I want to hear more about that.
According to the biblical account, the period between the conquest of Canaan and the rise of the Davidic monarchy was a period in which the Israelites were ruled by a series of military leaders called judges. Among these judges are several famous Bible characters, such as Samson, Gideon, and the female judge, Deborah. Deborah is important because, according to biblical scholars, a portion of the book of Judges, called the Song of Deborah, is thought to be the oldest layer of text in the entire Bible. The last major character before the monarchical period,
shout out to Deborah. Look at you, Deborah,
is the prophet Samuel, who was a Levite. It was Samuel who initially appointed Saul to be king, and then later David. David is followed by his son Solomon, and then after Solomon, the Israelites split into 2 major kingdoms, the kingdom of Judah in the south and the kingdom of Israel in the north. Judah, of course, was mostly comprised of the tribe of Judah, whereas Israel was comprised of all the remaining tribes. If you want to see the rest of the tree, you can check out my video on the kings of ancient Israel and Judah, which I've already posted and which you can find a link to in the description. But before I go, let me explain one more thing. It is said that there were 10 northern tribes.
I hope you're going to explain Queen of Sheba. I want to know about this one. This one seems pretty interesting to me for some reason. Also, what's up with King of Ethiopia?
But who exactly those 10 tribes were sometimes differ. There are actually 3 different ways we can come up with the number 10. One way is to leave the Levites to the side, as I've suggested earlier, and to count the tribe of Benjamin as part of the kingdom of Judah, because their allotment of land was very close to Judah's, and they were usually thought of as being on the Judah side of the border. But another way is to include Simeon with Judah instead. This is because, according to the Bible, Simeon, like Levi, was not given a separate land allotment. And this was because of a special punishment that was given to those 2 brothers, which is mentioned back in Genesis 34. But a third way is to go ahead and count Levi, but to combine Ephraim and Manasseh back together as the tribe of Joseph. This is the way that Jews usually count the 12 tribes, as evidenced by these stamps from the modern state of Israel. But no matter which way you divide the tribes, again, you usually end up with 10.
Hey, I like these stamps. I don't know, this video is interesting. This stamps has got me right now. Which one do I like the most? I will be honest. This Judah stamp is getting me. No, I'm sorry. Judah's nice. I meant to say Joseph. This Joseph stamp is kind of getting me. I kind of love it. Yeah, they're all really good. I gotta say, Gad's man. I like Gad. Simeon, he actually does have a really good one. And Reuben, the color has gotten me. It's not so much the design, it's really just the color, but it's got me. But Joseph, I don't know. Yours kind of, it's like it stands out for that one. And I really do enjoy it. Uh, Benjamin, that's a good wolf, I gotta say. But again, man, number one, Joseph, close number two, Gad. Everyone else, really good contest here, guys. I'm sorry we can't all be the winner. Uh, Third place is Judah.
10 that are considered to have made up the northern tribes. And this has led to all sorts of speculation and pseudo-historical theories. You see, as I mentioned in the next part in this series, the northern kingdom gets destroyed first, leaving only Judah behind, where the people become known as Jews. So some people like to talk about the so-called lost 10 tribes of Israel, who are supposedly distinct from the Jews and about whom there are all kinds of crazy theories. Once again, I hope to cover that topic at some point next year. Okay, be sure to check out the description for the other parts of this series. And take note that the final part of this series, which will focus on the genealogy of Jesus, is scheduled, very appropriately, for Christmas Day. So if you're not yet subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.
Guys, wait, hold on. Shout out to Useful Charts. Check him out. Watch another one of his videos. Buy one of his posters. Follow him. But also comment and be like, hey, I was watching this really great YouTuber. His name is Devon, last name Rucker. And he was doing a reaction to your video, and I thought it was incredible. I thought it was one of the best reaction videos I've ever seen in my life. He's such a great reactor, and you'd love him if you'd actually saw his reaction to your videos. Comment that exact statement, and then also subscribe, like my video, and comment in that and say all the good cool things. Be like, oh man, I like your shirt. I know you purposely didn't iron it because I'm relatable, guys. So yes, enough with the banter. Realistically, I do really appreciate everyone who watches these videos. And again, this is all part of my journey. Just trying to get as much knowledge as I can about the thing that I'm putting into me, like spiritually. So like, if anybody watches this far, I truly appreciate it. And as always, bye.